Thank you so much for taking the time to attend this talk today. I know it's 4 o'clock, end of the day, the last session probably, and then you're good to go. So before I get started with my talk, I kind of wanted to share this little story. It was a cloudy day in Seattle. I was pretty bored, and I was like, okay, let me open up ChatGPT and see if I can entertain myself. I opened up ChatGPT, and I asked it this question: hey, do you want to play a game with me? And the response that I got was just so amazing that at that point I realized, oh my God, this is the technology of the future. I can see it. This is awesome. So I took a screenshot of it. You guys want to see it? It is going to blow your mind. I'll give it a second too, so that you can just read through it. Yeah. This is obviously a joke, right? But it's true though. This was the earliest versions of ChatGPT, and it was just so funny for me to go through this whole interaction with it and see, oh my God, AI is not taking my job. So with all of that, this is actually a great time to be talking about AI though. And the reason for that is because we as UX practitioners can actually have kind of caught this technology at the right time that we can shape the future of this. I always felt that, UX as a discipline was very nascent in the Web 2.0 phase. So we kind of missed the boat. So it was always treated as this, discipline that would make things pretty at the end of all the product thinking. But now we've kind of got it. We've figured out our whole stride of what our strengths are. We've got a seat in the table, and I'm excited for us to be able to change the future of AI. A little bit about me. I currently run this book company called Abracadabra Books. And I have big plans and ambitions because I believe in the future of education. After I had kids, education and what impact it can have on children just became such an important thing for me to start focusing on that I left my decade-and-a-half career as a designer to kind of start focusing on this. Before that, I was a lead designer at Roku. So I worked on building and bringing, commerce experiences to television. Basically, you could pick up your remote and shop. Before that, I worked at Amazon AI. And this was an interesting time because this was 6 years ago. And my goodness, AI was not any close to foundational, generative, nothing of that sort. So it was a very, very interesting time, but we were discussing bold ideas. We were discussing all that the future could hold for us, and I'm so glad that we're starting to realize some of the dreams that we dreamed of at least 6 years ago. Before that, I worked at Amazon Key, and Amazon Key was the in-home and in-car delivery product at Amazon. It was a huge experimental product that the company put out, and it was such an exciting experience to work there. The reason I kind of call out these products that I worked on is because for at least a decade and a half, I worked on very early experiences and very early products too. And one thing that has been common across both products that have made it and actually not made it is that in the early days, it kind of feels absurd. Right? You kind of feel like, is there any use to spending this time that I'm spending on doing this? Is this going to come of any fruition? But one thing that I can tell you is products that went out to actually be successful are the ones that prioritized our users, are the ones that actually started with a real problem and solved the problem. So I think, if you ever find yourself working on a new product or, when you're experimenting and learning with a new technology like AI, something to ask yourself is this solving a problem that needs to be solved? With that, I kind of wanted to show you some data that might help you feel pumped about focusing on AI or trying to learn more about AI. This is a very interesting graph. This came out in 2011 in the Time magazine. And this was actually put together by this futurist computer scientist, Raymond Kurzweil. the interesting thing about this was at least like 10 years ago, and it was such a prescient prediction of the future. The most important year to call out here is 2023, and it's frightening how accurate Raymond Kurzweil was, because he predicted that is the year that machines will surpass human brain power. And that's really interesting, right? Like, what qualifies as brain power? So he's partially right, he's partially not correct, but just in terms of like, analytical and logical reasoning, somewhat of a logical reasoning, I think he's somewhat right. Technology is starting to grow and grow at a very, very exponential pace, and he predicts 2045 as the year that we reach singularity. Well, why is talking about singularity even important here? Because I think any talk about AI is incomplete if we don't at least acknowledge singularity, because that's the eventual future that we're building toward, right? So there's going to be a lot of work and innovation that's going on in this field, and that's going to go into reaching singularity, whether we like it or not. But we as UX practitioners can make sure that it's at least serving humanity for the good and not for the bad. Well, the other point that I also hope that we reach is in the next 10 years, I want us to kind of come back and talk about, okay, we're in this eventual future of singularity being an inevitable outcome. So how do we actually, like, what are things that we do to make sure that we shape that? So I hope we have that kind of time. With that, I kind of wanted to focus on the next 10 years of AI. So this talk is going to be very, very tactical in that aspect, to say that, okay, here are some bold predictions that we make for the next 10 years of UI or AI, and what are the product implications of AI being so powerful like it is today and will evolve in the next 10 years. So to make the whole construct of AI a lot more simpler, I think what will be the eventual outcome in the next 10 years is AI is going to help us do more of what we love and do less of what we hate. And this is very abstract, right? Like, so I kind of wanted to pick two examples and go deeper into to make sure that I validate these statements that I made. The first area that I want to focus on is streaming, because I told you I worked in Roku, right? Streaming is a very, very interesting space. It's disrupted a huge industry and is continuing to disrupt this huge industry of media and entertainment, which has been very, very important to mankind and humanity. So I think one of the biggest problems with streaming is very apparent when you see Netflix. Netflix is an amazingly designed app with extremely talented people working on it, product managers like bringing in new product and content creators, bringing in new and amazing content pretty much every single day. And the app is very slick, beautiful, and is really, really the best in class out there. But I would be remiss if I tell you, when I go into Netflix, decision fatigue doesn't set in. When you open the Netflix UI, you can see, oh my God, there's just so much. What do I pick and what do I choose? A lot of times, I spend like 10 minutes just scrolling through all these different options and watching these different trailers. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to give up. Sometimes it's just about going back to the same show that I know I've watched 10 times and just putting it on because I don't want to take a new decision of watching a new show. Well, what about YouTube? YouTube is amazing again, right? Like user-generated content, more power to content creators. Such a beautiful UI, amazing, talented people working on it. But one of the things that I find problematic in YouTube is that everything is views. It doesn't really matter if the video is relevant to you, if you like that modality of presentation. I don't like Mr. Beast, but he has the most number of views, and it gets recommended to me a lot of times. Not all the time, but a lot of times. So how might this change with the future of AI? I kind of decided to go on this thought exercise and came up with a few designs that I thought might be helpful. And in true designer fashion, I kind of started with personas. So here is Lena. Lena is a student in economics, And she loves to learn through videos. She loves watching MIT courseware, and she loves to actually go in and understand ideas much more deeply than she learns in her class. But the biggest problem for Lena is she gets lost a lot when she's watching these videos. And what do I mean by that? There is sometimes a terminology that's thrown in the middle of the video that she has no clue about. And a lot of times she's going to have to like spin up another tab and look for it and learn about it. Or there's something new that's happening that she has no idea about, like a new concept that's thrown in there. So she opens a new tab, she opens ChatGPT, she starts going on this search or journey to actually find and learn more about it, and then finally gets lost and ends up in Instagram. Well, how might this change with AI? Well, here's a future experience to kind of just like toy around with. So you can see that here, Principles of Macroeconomics by MIT courseware is front and center. But you also see that Lena has a lot of tools in her disposal right within YouTube to make sure that this experience is actually immersive. There is a reference to Occam's law in the video, and AI has gone through the video and analyzed it frame by frame and has come up with that definition that's available right there on the side when that part of the video is playing. You can also dive deeper and go into those deeper concepts on Occam's law as you're kind of watching that video. How cool would that be, right? And we usually learn concepts better when they're interactive. So what if you could take a quiz and take a quiz with a group of people and ground those concepts in a much more better way so that like you have a clear understanding of what you're learning and what other future cases of something was. Well, no learning, especially as a student, is complete without books. What about book clubs and book club recommendations? All to say that, you know, this is kind of an immersive learning experience for Lena. And this is pretty personalized to her. And you'll see why I mean that when you see the next slide. Also, what if there was a teaching assistant that was available to answer any questions, to help you understand concepts better, to solve questions, to solve issues? So these are all future states that we could be brainstorming or thinking about when we have AI at our disposal. Now here is another example of this persona. He's probably, I want to name him Dave. But here's an example of another persona who wants to learn about macroeconomics, but not for what Lena wants to learn about. Like he wants to learn about macroeconomics to know what impact it might have in his life, what tactical decisions he might want to take with his finances and his like spending decisions, or even like living life for that matter, which country would be the best place to live and stuff like that. So throwing out a 3 million view Principles of Macroeconomic lecture for Dave is not really going to be helpful, right? Like he's going to want this content to be more personalized to him. He's also going to want to have different tools for immersive learning experiences. And how would that look like? So you can see this is a much more colloquial video, and it kind of goes through these concepts, but goes through these concepts at a pretty high level so that Dave is able to understand them at the degree of detail that's appropriate to him. He's also probably more interested in what's in the news than joining a forum or a discussion. So that's the option that's available to him. And he's busy at that, right? Like, so audiobooks of maybe Freakonomics would be what's more relevant to him versus big, long-form books on the details of economics. So stuff like this is very, very possible with the advent of AI. And I think like this is something that we've been pushing for as designers, right? Like we've always built these personas. We've always built these use cases for these personas. But a lot of times we find that, oh, I can't build this, like this is not going to be possible. And, you know, like maybe we satisfy both of these customers or both of these personas and build something in the middle. And a lot of times there are Frankenstein experiences that we end up building as a consequence. And we could potentially see a future where that doesn't have to happen. So for the next 10 years, I see with AI, personalization is going to be on steroids. We're going to get and use a lot of the data that these companies have already collected about us to be able to provide better user experience for people. We're also going to be focusing a lot on multimodality. We're going to be building conversational experiences. We're going to be building more text-based experiences and AR and VR-based experiences to offer more immersive experiences within the platforms that we're using. And finally, we might even move towards like AI assistant and agent-based systems. And these systems, I don't know how well they will perform in the next few years, but we will definitely see that getting better and better in the upcoming years. So companies are also going to have to make different decisions about how they monetize. Well, what about views and their relevance? Because every persona or persona group is going to have a certain video that's recommended to them. So what happens to creators who are monetized by the number of views that their videos get? How does that change? How does search change? Search is already changing, right? But how does that change with the effect of multimodality, with the effect of personalization and what have you? There are just so many aspects that are going to change, which is extremely interesting and, best of all, more usable than what it is today. Now I want to enter the area that I'm super interested in, which is books. So that was the software space, and this is the physical space. And books are extremely interesting because they kind of open your world, right? And as a toddler mom, I just noticed how beautiful an impact it had on my child's life. So I want to actually pull up this quote. There are many little ways to enlarge your child's world. Love of books is the best of all. This is a very, very powerful quote because as a parent, you want to instill this habit or behavior of reading for your child because it just opens up their world to learn about so many new things and learn them quickly. But if you've ever asked a parent who's on the hunt to pick out the right book for their child, you'll see that they love that art of reading, but picking the right book for their child is a huge challenge. And why is that? Finding the right book for your child is a lot of times like fishing in the open sea. There are just so many options to choose from, and children are very, very specific. A lot of times they'll call out that they don't like the dress that the dino is wearing. They don't like the sound that's coming out of that squirrel's mouth. All kinds of weird things that you wouldn't have even imagined as an adult would be reasons to reject a book. And better yet, there's actual problems like reading age, which you cannot suss till you actually get a book and put it in front of your child. And this problem is not just with consumers, right? Creating books is such a hard thing. You can find that anybody who actually goes out on this challenge or journey to create a book, if you ask them, you'll see that it's at least 2 to 4 years to actually go out and publish a book. There's just a lot of work that goes into it, and these publishing companies make it so hard for you to make iterations, for you to make changes, for you to source out the right artwork, to find the right illustrator, to proofread, to market your book. Everything is a challenge. But with AI, it's already happening, but it can happen much more quicker. You could actually generate a book that your child likes within minutes. But the problem right now is a lot of people are going in and creating these books and putting them out on Amazon, but you can find that these books are very low quality, right? They're not really built with this notion of improving your child's learning. They're actually built as sources of income to make money. But when we come at it from the curiosity of a parent that's trying to build something for their child, the experience will be completely different. And here's an example of how it could be. So you can see here that here is this very simple interface. You go in, And then you enter a bunch of details about your child, and you're presented with a bunch of genres, but you can actually go in and pick a genre that's interesting to your child. In this case, it's going to be dinosaurs. And then you can give a brief description of what the storyline could look like, right? You could just say, hey, my child has a hard time going to bed. He wants this friend called Dino to go to bed with him. And, he wants to be able to have a story read to him about Dino every single day. So when you go in and enter it in this interface, AI could actually do the hard work and create this book for you. And here you have it, right? Like, what would an experience like this look like in the future? You can basically preview the book. You can go in and edit details of the book. And at the end of the day, print it, all within seconds. So how does this change books and publishing as an industry? This really makes the whole notion of an author very amorphous. Everybody is an author at this point. And learning becomes very tailor-made for every child. You're going to be able to make sure that you capture nuances that are not captured in a lot of books, mask words that are not really masked in a lot of books. Like, there was one book, for example, where my child really loved the idea of a duck who was going in hunt of a polar bear. And the duck liked to throw things, so he started to throw things at everybody. And you could actually abstract and change concepts like that to make sure that it's tailor-made for your child, and your child is not going to pick up bad behaviors from books just because they're funny. Well, that's for the next 10 years. How does the next 20 years look like? And this is what makes me super passionate about this space. I think professions will start to evolve based on passions, then skills. We come from this industrial revolution of schools, right? Like industrial revolution age of schools. So where there were a certain set of skills that they wanted people to actually acquire, and that's where schools were started. Schools have now become this construct where you send your kids to when you have to work. Learning is also starting to get very diluted because it's starting to get more and more generic, while the economy is actually going into the realm of specializations. So it really needs to change in that sense, especially with the advent of AI. You have the capability to make that change happen. Schools and colleges can actually focus on nurturing the individual, focusing individual interests, learning styles, capabilities, and disabilities, and ensure that, the learning experience is accessible to everybody. And finally, I think critical thinking and creative arts are going to grow. And this basically will take us back to the Roman times, right? Like when people were actually just spending a lot of time being philosophers, being artists and performers. It could actually take us back in time. And this is going to be the era that we're possibly going to be building towards. And so it's exciting to see all the new things that we can put in front of our kids and our next generation with the advent of AI. I'm almost getting ready to close here. You can see, what does it mean for UX? You can see that we'll start to dive deeper into conversational experiences. I want to reference this talk by James Chingola on YouTube. And this talk was actually 6 years ago. And this is a very, very interesting talk because here he covers concepts like cooperative principle and a lot of other voice design principles, which are around like progressive escalation and stuff like that, which were very important in the Amazon AI times, but they are going to be even more important in the future with conversational experiences. And conversational experiences are going to be the natural modality of interaction, so it's going to go much and much deeper in that direction, so making sure that we master that and understand how to be able to employ that in our daily interfaces is going to be even more important. We're also going to want to spend a lot of time with AR and VR experiences because, again, in the nature of true immersive global technologies, AR and VR is going to be the future. So we're going to want to spend our time in understanding how AI is going to get married with AI and AR and VR experiences and to be able to master that intermodality. And finally, it's going to be the ethics of AI. Ethics of AI is a very, very loaded topic because it's very easy to say that technology is going to be bad or good, but it's very hard to be able to shape that. And as designers and as practitioners, we can actually focus our time on conveying which aspects of UI and AI need to be ethical. And what do I mean by that? An example of this is, let us know when I'm actually interacting with a machine versus when I'm interacting with a human. Let me know when something needs to be progressively escalated and give me an option to do that. Let me know when something is sourced from a piece of data that was built from a piece of work that was built by me or by some other human, and you're learning from that. This is where conversations around copywriting and all of those things come into play. So we will be needing to spend a lot of time on the ethics side as designers, but I hope we have more time to be able to get there because this technology is still maturing very fast. With all of that, I wanted to leave you with this one little meme. Let's make sure that your engineers are not going to be building something just because they can't stop building. And it's our job as designers to make sure that doesn't happen. Thank you. I'm sorry, let me put this back. Any questions? Yes. Can we have a...
Thanks. So going back toward like the ethics of AI, and going back to like your book example, a lot of AI right now, even like the generative AI, is more based on other people's works and large language models. How, I guess, especially if you're working towards publishing those books, let's not just say it's just for one child, but you're publishing it. In the ethics, how do you see that evolving as generative AI, or I guess it's kind of like a two-part. How do you see it evolving with the ethics of referencing other people's works because it is being generated by them? But also, do you see a way to where we could actually build AI to generate pretty much out of nowhere like humans do?
Yeah, so this is a great question. There are just so many aspects to what goes into building these generative AI and large language models. Some of the things that we can do are make sure that people that you're sourcing this data or information from are actually monetized and are paid for that data that they're providing to be able to train these models. That's one aspect. The second aspect could be generating synthetic data, right? Like there are companies like Abacus AI, which are actually working on that to make sure that these models are learning, but they're not really learning by stealing work. So that would be another aspect of it. And the third one would be define what learning actually is. Is a model just taking a work and stealing it up front, which was the case with a lot of things that were out in the news recently? Or is it actually learning from that? Because at that point, you're really treating a machine as an agent-based system, which has agency, and you're giving it an entity, right? Like if another artist is inspired by a piece of work, it's called inspiration and not stealing, right? So I think these are the challenges which we will need, or we will be facing in the future. And copyright laws will need to evolve too, right? Like right now, I was just talking about this to somebody before the conference. So you can see that just changing a word or adding a dot or adding a line is going to make it original work. Is that really true? So there are just so many amorphous things that need to be revisited, especially with the advent of AI. And I don't have an answer to it, but these are all things that I keep thinking about when I'm thinking about these laws and how they need to change. Anybody else?
Hey,
Hi.
great session. It's funny how things happen to us as we turn into parents. I went through a similar experience, started a design thinking learning program once I became a mom for other kids. But I'm curious to hear about your journey with Abracadabra books and where you are with that. Yeah, not sure if you're ready to share or if it's in stealth mode or.
No, it's been 8 months since I quit my role at Roku. And right now, I'm focusing on building these books for kids in areas like science, technology, engineering, and management. I don't want to call it STEAM. Instead, I want to call it STEM because the other part that I want to expose kids to is culture, right? Like global cultures and global awareness, I think, is going to be key. The goal here is to kind of start with a physical medium because it's much more accessible to a larger population. After that, I kind of want to start to experiment with other modalities as AI evolves and be able to make this information more accessible. Right now, my books are not really powered, like built on AI, they're actually powered by AI, for the lack of a better word, because there are authors that we've hired who are actually sitting and reviewing and actually creating these books and using AI as a research tool. But in the future, we'll see where things go and how these copyright laws and everything else evolve so that this can actually be much more automated and be personalized to kids.
Are they available?
Yes, they're available
for
on
people
Amazon.
to buy?
Amazon and my website. Happy to share links to it too, specifically if anybody is interested.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm not super familiar with how in depth your the Abracadabra books is going, but just something that I'm curious at the thinking about that from your business perspective. And you touched a lot on personalization, how AI can really help a lot there. How do you feel being a business owner in this space, especially one where children are your audience, and with the future of AI getting closer to personalization? Do you have thoughts around children, how their level of information is input into the system, whether it's safety or maybe an okayness to let these types of models have more access to children? Or I'm just curious your general thoughts. This might be a discussion point. It doesn't I don't know if you have a specific answer to that. But.
Yeah, a lot of these things are evolving as I speak. So, I would love to hear, I would like to make it as a discussion, honestly. But one of the things that I'm seeing is a lot of parents are starting to lose trust in the public education system. And the reason for that is because it's not really helping a lot of kids. You can see that kids are performing a lot lesser than their grade level. The overall interest in learning new topics, and these are all statistics that are available out there. You can see that the learning proclivity is starting to reduce among, younger kids and middle school kids and what have you. I think one of the biggest reasons why that is happening is because school hasn't changed much than what it was originally built for in the Industrial Revolution phase of just teaching you a bunch of skills. With personalization, where I see this is you're really going to be able to become agnostic of age and really start to think about things as concepts, right? Let's say that a child is interested in learning about rainforests. And if you're able to introduce them to this concept of what a rainforest is, it could be that they progressively start to learn that concept more and more as they start to become more and more interested in it. And AI is able to kind of match them and move them up that ladder so that they're having access to information that they possibly would not have in a traditional school system, right? So with that specific example of one vertical, you could really think about applying this to pretty much everything that you want to expose your child to. You could start with the basic concepts agnostic of age, and you could keep moving them up and up and up. And you can see how that's going to really benefit the slow learners and the fast learners, for lack of a better term, right? Like, it's all relative, but every child is going to be able to go at their own pace and be able to understand and explore concepts that are interesting. That's what schools like programs like Synthesis School are all trying to do, but I think like it'll become more and more prominent with the proliferation of AI, and whether it happens in the context of replacing traditional school, or happens as an augmentation of it, or actually happens as a homeschooling tool, we'll have to figure out and see how that goes, I think.
Yeah, interesting thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for sharing your vision of, two different visions of what it could look like. Super exciting, especially because going on the book journey, it opens education across the world, meaning you can sort of like everyone can be part of the conversation because it allows for multiple languages and the option of being multimodality. So you can change it for people who like to talk, people who like to be visual. If you like diagrams, you can be shown diagrams. Being able to customize the voice, being able to customize accent. So it opens up the opportunity for going off to the question that another fellow audience member asked about sort of like the ethics and who creates these models. Well, it prompts a question of also, well, you could create your own models. I mean, I've seen startups who are starting to monetize, who are looking for creators to put their voice, right? Yes. So that voice could be used on these books.
Yes.
And it's really interesting because as we adopt more of these tools, it's going to become more prevalent.
Yes.
So super exciting, and yeah, I'll take a look at your books.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm happy to share links to you, and connect with me on LinkedIn too if you want to learn more.
Yeah, thank you.
The thoughts, it's super exciting to actually powwow with people, because as a founder, I kind of tend to sit in my own corner and do my own things. So I'm so glad that you all are sharing your insights too. Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
So I've heard about that. The singularity is coming prediction for quite a while now. For the last, 10 or so years, people have always said, "Oh, it's right around the corner. It's going to be there." And I'm just kind of curious, because you talked about it as kind of from a futurist standpoint. What are the reasons that you see the singularity coming, I guess, in the next 20 or so years? I know a lot of people have weighed in already on that, but yeah, just curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately crowded by a lot of the research that I've done, so I've not developed my own opinion. So I'm going to be stating to you, but just at a high level, this was one of the most important things that we were discussing in Amazon AI at least 6 years ago, when we were actually manually classifying voice intents. We were like, oh, this looks like a hello, this looks like a bye, so it's a goodbye intent and stuff like that. So I understand that, this has been coming for a long time, and, we don't really know when it's going to be. But one thing that I do think, with the proliferation of these AI models, and the larger and larger, are actually, in the contrary, more powerful these language models become, even with a very small data set. One thing that I'm seeing is that the sense of agency is starting to get built in a lot of these language models, right? Whether you like it or not. And that is basically making it ask you very subjective questions and say that, I understand you're upset. I understand that this has not really solved the problem that you're trying to solve. That's where we are right now. But I think that part of reasoning and cooperation is going to start to be built into these models more and more, which at the end of the day might actually be the one accelerant towards singularity. I think like it's going to start as a very innocuous journey of how do I make this model more usable instead of that hangman example that I threw up there. And then it's what's going to accelerate that pace into becoming actually like an agent-based system. With that, when we reach that future, I don't know how the world is going to look. Like, I feel like we are going to be playing a big role as designers in contributing to that future. And some of the things that we can focus on are making sure that these agents are working in good faith, are doing the right things, just like when we are parenting a child, we set the right set of values. But where it will go to and who is going to parent the wrong child, I have no idea about. But I definitely think that 2040, 2045 seems like a very, very reasonable time frame where we have like machines that are very humanistic and able to like mirror or understand all parts of brain function and be able to perform at that level. And I think like you should also check out this YouTube video by the same guy. Like, it's the Lex Friedman podcast with Raymond Kurzweil. He goes into the details of this brain-computer interface and stuff like that. You might find it interesting too.
Interesting. I just had one other question as well. You talked about AI helping us do more of the things we love and less of the things we don't love. Mm-hmm. I'm also kind of just wondering if what ends up happening is that, I'm always, I can be a bit cynical mm-hmm. sometimes of what people will do when they have, more free time. Mm-hmm. So my first thought was, well, if we're spending less of time doing, the things we don't love, well, maybe we're just going to get lazier. At the end of the day, maybe people just start, streaming more and playing video games more. Not that that's bad, of course, just...
Yeah, or you might like pick up a sport. You might start to actually do more arts. Like I've always wanted to learn how to play the guitar, which is why I think like going back to the Roman times feels like a very nice metaphor. The future, you would have more free time to pursue your passions and things that would actually make you happy, which is kind of what like the ancient world was about. So it's kind of like going back in time in that aspect, I think. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? All right, this was a great session. Yeah, feel free to like connect with me on LinkedIn if you want more information or want to just like shout out and share ideas with me. My email is sindu.ux@gmail.com. So please send me your ideas. I'm always looking for insights from parents and others that are interested in space. Appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.